What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik of the Fight Guys, and I'm also a Forbes contributor. I cover boxing and MMA, combat sports, WWE, and even sports video games. But tonight, I want to talk about UFC 247. This is something that I really want to get back to doing on a regular basis on the channel in terms of just recapping the sporting the combat sporting events that happen over the weekend. Sometimes it's difficult because I go ahead and I get the coverage in for Forbes, and then I turn around and I want to come here and I want to actually talk about what we saw. And I'm trying to give an opportunity because this is a little bit of an impromptu type of live stream. So I'm trying to give an opportunity for somebody to come in or someone to come in and get an opportunity to watch us or watch me talk about uh UFC 247, which was interesting to say the least. John Jones defended his title, successfully defended his title tonight against Dominic Reyes, and Valentina Shevchenko successfully defended her UFC Women's Flyweight Championship against Caitlin Shukagian. But two very different title defenses, I must say, two very different title defenses. So I'm going to talk about what happened there as you guys come in to hopefully check this out. Uh, Feel free to launch in some questions. I'll try to get to them as I can, but I do want to kind of move through the card. As I mentioned, John Jones successfully defended his title, and Valentina Shevchenko successfully defended her title. But let's talk about some of the other things that happened on this card. One of the biggest storylines, in my opinion, about this card is the horrible judging. There was some really, really questionable scorecards presented tonight. And you really hate to call out like one person. You really do. But I have to call out Joe Solis. He, I'm not sure what exactly is going on and how in the world he's allowed to judge mixed martial arts bouts. It came out tonight after he submitted some very questionable cards that he hadn't actually judged an MMA bout since 2017. I don't know what his scores were that night, but I can tell you tonight in Houston, Texas, they were trash. They were horrible. So let's go over this card. We're going to start all the way from the top of the show. Uh, the show opened up with Yusef Zalal taking on Austin Lingo. This honestly was one of the only fights that went to the scorecards that was judged properly, and I wouldn't say I had an issue with it. Yusef Zalal defeats Austin Lingo 30-27 on all three cards. Zalal was actually supposed to be cornered by James Krause. James Krause stepped up for for Arroyo, who was supposed to fight Trevin Giles tonight, and James Krause just really came through big for the UFC and for fans by stepping up, taking a fight a whole weight class above his own weight class. Even you could say two weight classes above because he generally most of his fights has been at lightweight. But so he wasn't in Zalal's corner, but it really didn't look like he needed him. Zalal just had, to me, much more of a diverse game. His movement, his striking from all angles was just really too sophisticated for Austin Lingo, who really came into the octagon tonight with an attack just really bent on boxing and putting pressure on. Didn't show much off of the ground when he did get taken down. I think he got taken down 6 times. So Zalal just totally outclassed him. I had no problem with the judges' scorecard in that one. The next one, Andre Ewell defeated Jonathan Martinez by a split decision, and this was a poor card in my opinion. Joe Solis strikes for the first time with his horribleness in this particular fight. 30-27 for Andre Ewell. There is no way in the world you can tell me that Andre Ewell won all three of these rounds. It's just not. If you have ever judged or watched a mixed martial arts bout in your life, you know Andre Ewell did not win all three of these rounds, especially the third round where he was outstruck and seemingly hurt on at least two occasions. So I thought it was a totally egregious scorecard. And like I said, it was the first time that Ewell struck. I could deal with a 29-28 because the fight was close. I personally had it 29-28 for Martinez. Didn't go that way. In the next fight, Journey Newsom took all of the he took everything out of the judge's hands by knocking out Domingo Pilarte with a nasty overhand right. Pilarte, he kind of, earned his spot in the on the UFC's roster based off of what he did on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. But in my opinion, I haven't been impressed with him in the fights that I've seen. He holds his head way too high. He's very tall for the weight class, 6 feet tall, I believe. He had literally 6 or 7 inches in height on Journey Newsom, who's 5'6", 5'5", but compactly built and strong. And I felt like literally he just held his head too high. He was over aggressive. I thought he did the same thing in the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series fight of his that I watched. But in that particular one, he took some damage, but he was able to eke out the victory. I think it was a submission victory. This time he got caught by a powerful puncher in Journey Newsom. And just seconds before he got caught, and this was a first round TKO, seconds before he got caught, he did land a nice head kick that seemed to buzz Journey Newsom. But Newsom quickly recovered and landed the overhand right. I think that Pilarte might have been okay on his way down, but as he went down, he kind of had like a whiplash effect. And I'm sure that probably disoriented him a little bit more. And then he ended up getting pounded out on the ground. But it was a strong performance by Journey Newsom. I'm not sure what Newsom's ceiling is because he is so, I hate to say it, vertically challenged. He's going to have a reach issue against a lot of fighters. And what happens when he starts to fight a longer fighter in his weight class who is more skilled, has better defense than Domingo Pilarte. So that'll be interesting. But he had a nice victory. I thought he should have gotten a performance of the night bonus because it was literally like a one-hitter quitter. Almost a couple shots on the ground, but I thought he, was really I thought that, he fought well, and I don't know how. I always ask myself, well, how could he have done better from a performance in the night standpoint? He got the quick finish. It was a kind of like the highlight reel kind of finish. What could he have done better? So I don't know. I thought he should have probably gotten the performance bonus, but he didn't. Next up, somebody that did get a performance bonus is Mario Batista. He knocked off previously undefeated Myles Johnson, second round TKO with a flying knee and some punches to follow it up. Myles Johnson looks good. He really does look like a guy who could ultimately become a contender for the bantamweight title down the line. But it's not going to happen anytime soon because he ran into a significant speed bump in Mario Batista. In Batista's last fight, he really looked like he was more of like a pure brawler. And it seemed as though, and he kind of alluded to this in the post-fight interview, that he came out saying, I'm going to show more layers of my game. And that's exactly what he did. I'm going to give a shout out to my man Ness Mendoza. It's fight o'clock. I appreciate you sticking around, man. I know it's been a while since we had a video up, and it's been a while since we've done a stream. I appreciate you coming back through and still also remembering what our little tagline is there. I appreciate that, Ness. Never, 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 never not appreciate it. But yeah, it was a very good fight, very good performance by Mario Batista. And he really impressed me because I honestly had kind of put him in a little bit of a box of a brawler, but he really showed the maturation of his game. And I'm interested in seeing what happens with him in his next fight. He's kind of set the bar pretty high, knocking off a prospect of Myles Johnson's stature. In the next fight, I want to tell you, if you want to see somebody live up to a nickname in the most, I mean, in the clearest way possible, Chaos Williams. His name is Kalen or Callan Williams, but he seems to have dropped that government name and he's going with Chaos Williams. And I don't blame him because it is packed with charisma, just a fantastic name. And he came out and displayed nothing but chaos. In 27 seconds, he knocked out Alex Morano. I'm telling you, these two guys clashed in the middle of the octagon, like bang. And Chaos Williams is a more athletic, longer guy. He won that initial collision. knocked Alex Morano back. And like I said, it took just 27 seconds for him to get the finish. And he does a backflip in the octagon immediately after. He made a statement. Now, I'm not saying anything about, contending down the line. It's way too early for that kind of thing. This was his UFC debut. He had taken this fight on just 2 weeks' notice, but he is very athletic, very long. I think he has some defensive deficiencies. I had watched some fights of his before Saturday because I kind of wanted to be prepped watching him against Morano, and I saw some gaps, but some of those fights were, maybe, months or what have you beforehand. But I was really I was impressed with what I saw tonight, but not as impressed with what I saw before that. So it's going to be interesting in seeing him in the octagon with somebody with a little bit more skill and see if they can push him a little bit more. Now, let's talk about more bad judging. Lauren Murphy, and I love Lauren Murphy. She is a warrior. She really is. I think she gets the most out of her talent. And when I say that, I'm generally relating that to a fighter who may not be uber athletic, right? But their skill level, their hard work, their toughness, sometimes it begins to bridge those gaps. Lauren Murphy is like that. In the boxing ring, I always use that same type of description for Paulie Malignaggi. I think Paulie Malignaggi got the absolute most out of the physical ability that he was given. But in this fight, Lauren Murphy did not deserve to win the decision over Andrea Lee. I thought Andrea Lee landed the more effective strikes throughout at least 2 of the 3 rounds. You could have made the argument that she had the more effective strikes through all 3 rounds. Somebody literally, I might have been Joe Solis again, I'm not sure, to have to double check, scored the fight 30-27 for Lauren Murphy. There is no way in the world she won all 3 of those rounds. It's just no way. Split decision goes Lauren Murphy's way, 30-27, 29-28, 28-29. Thought it was horrible judging again. So now we're at a point right now where there's already 2 fights. Now, just think about this. At this point of where we are in the card, only 3 of the fights have gone to a decision. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 3 of the fights have gone to a decision where we are on the card, and 2 of them were bad decisions, in my opinion. That doesn't happen most of the time. All right, so let's move on to the next fight, which I thought was really cool. It was the featured prelim. James Krause had stepped in, as I had mentioned, for the injured Arroyo, and he took on Trevin Giles, middleweight fight. Trevin Giles is physically talented, strong, powerful. But I also do question that fight IQ a bit. He does some things sometimes that I'm just it makes me scratch my head, right? Um Tonight, I thought that he fought well on his feet. Obviously, he was a bigger, stronger, more powerful man. And I also thought that in the first round he did really good job defending submissions, because James Krause is really good on the ground. But I think that physical strength kind of helped Trevin Giles fight the hands when he was able to avoid some of the chokes, just being a bigger, stronger guy. And then also you got to remember, James Krause took this fight on 30 hours notice. So he really didn't even have a training camp. So you could tell that from how quickly he gassed. But I give him a lot of credit because his heart and his corner pushed him through. And, he had enough burst of energy to go the distance. Trevin Giles did win by split decision, 29-28 on 2 cards, 28-29 in Krause's favor on another. I thought that wasn't a horrible decision. I could have seen it going Krause's way overall, but I'm not gonna complain about that decision and say it was dreadful, because, like I said, it could have gone either way. So yeah, that one, what it was. That's pretty much what it was with that one. Now let's move on to the main card. Starts on, thank you, Mr. Mendoza. Starts off with Derek Lewis against Illa Latifi. Yet another horrible decision. Everybody seems to like Derek Lewis. I understand he's a charismatic, funny guy, knocks people out, but he didn't win this fight, y'all. Derek Lewis did not win this fight tonight. Illa Latifi had the right game plan, even though it wasn't all that pleasing to watch. He waited for Derek Lewis to somewhat smother his offense, And as soon as he did that, got in too close and took away his range advantage, Latifi would wrap him up. And then through the second and third rounds, he was securing impact takedowns. Now, I will say this, while on the ground, he did not mount much offense. He more or less just held his position. But the takedowns that he landed in the second and third round were supposed to be and should have been enough for him to win this fight 29-28. I will give Derek Lewis the first round. Neither man did much, but I thought that Lewis did the better work. But in the second and third round, Latifi took those rounds. Lewis came on strong at the end of the third, and Latifi looked tired. But I don't think that the energy that Lewis showed in the last 30 to 40 seconds of the round should have superseded all of the takedowns and the top control that Latifi had. Now, it wasn't an eventful fight. It wasn't. But you got to judge it the way you have to judge it. And Latifi, I thought, did the better work in the second and third rounds, and he should have won. The next fight was a really tough fight to score, really good fight. Dan Ige against Mirsad Bektic. It went split decision in favor of Dan Ige. It wasn't a bad, horrible decision at all. It was very understandable how fight could have gone that way. They both have their moments. I thought Dan Ige clearly won the first round. I thought Bektic clearly won the second round, and that third round was really kind of a toss-up. But I don't have a problem with it going Ige's way. I thought he fought really well. Mirsad Bektic, though, this guy, I thought for sure he was a future title contender, possibly a future champion, but he just seems to have a problem getting over the hump. The biggest loss for him in his career, that seemed to me to kind of like change everything for him. He was dominating. I'm talking about just dominating the damage. He was just dominating him, right? And I trying to remember when this fight took place. It's one of the greatest comebacks in, I would have to say, in UFC history. I mean, because he was dominating Darren Elkins, just dominating him. And for whatever reason, he gassed out. It seems like he had I'm talking about Darren. Now, Darren Elkins bleeds in every fight, but I'm trying to tell you, he would look like he was out of there. And Bektic gassed out in like the second or third round and ends up getting stopped himself. When that happened, this guy's career has not been the same since. And he's got a couple, I think he has a win maybe over Godofredo Pepe in between here, but on a body shot, if I'm not mistaken. But he's just, or maybe it was Marco Polo Reyes. I can't remember which one it was, but he has a victory on a body shot in between there. But he's not been the same guy. And tonight, I felt he looked good, but just not good enough to beat Dan Ige. But I thought it was a good fight. The next fight was heavyweights, Justin Tafa against Juan the Kraken Adams. Both guys coming off of stoppage losses in their last fight. I kind of knew this one wasn't going to last long, and it didn't. First round knockout for Justin Tafa. Juan Adams looked like a promising guy at some point, but now he is on this dreaded 3-fight losing streak, 5-3. I don't know if he's at cut level yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm going to tell you like this. If he loses one more fight, like without a victory in there somewhere, and even possibly even with a victory, you might be looking at a Bellator heavyweight. You might be looking at a PFL heavyweight. You might even be looking at a one championship heavyweight if there's an interest there, because the one championship heavyweight division is very light. So it's tough. It's tough. He's in a tough situation. Justin Tafa really needed this win because he got knocked silly. I think about Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I think no, that's not what he fought, but I know he was knocked out in his last fight. I'm trying to remember. Let me it's another rising heavyweight who hasn't really quite made his name yet. Jorgen De Castro. Jorgen De Castro knocked him out first round. Both guys were just cracking. That was back in October. So he needed this for sure to bounce back, and he ended up getting it. Let's see. We got Matthew Martinez says great fight. Let's see it again. I would agree with that. I think you're talking about the main event. And I'm coming to that in a second. Psychic Bubblegum Man says, let me guess, the judges gave him a fight. What happened? They had Jones. They handed Jones a fight. I wouldn't go that far, but let's talk about the co-main event first. Valentina Shevchenko against Caitlin Chukagian. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, there are not 3 better fighters in the world right now than Valentina Shevchenko. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about female fighters. There aren't 3 fighters in the world, regardless of gender, who are better than Valentina Shevchenko. And I was saying that before tonight. I'm just telling you, this lady is, I've never seen. Now, we know she's fought Amanda Nunes twice, lost 2 very close decisions to her. But that was Shevchenko fighting above her weight class, above the weight class she should be in. But as a flyweight, man, she is as untouchable as any champion in any division. I'm telling you, she has nearly cleaned this division out already. There is nobody close. Now, I didn't give Caitlin Chukagian much of a chance to win this fight. I didn't. I didn't think that she had much of a chance. And you're not going to beat Shevchenko if you can't threaten her with a KO. And Chukagian is just naturally a lighter striker who likes to point fight, so to speak. It's almost like this pure karate style, and you have to be able to threaten Shevchenko with hurting or dazing her or stopping her, and she doesn't have that. Shevchenko was quicker, more powerful. She had far more snap on all of her strikes, and anytime they went into the clinch, it was like we're not even in the same ballpark. We're not even in the same ballpark. I knew that this was going to be a brutal loss for Chukagian because she was just so physically overmatched. Shevchenko gets the 3rd round TKO. There is a spin kick in this fight that I wish that I could show you without violating some sort of copyright, but I'm trying to. There is a spin kick in here, and if I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you a link. I'm going to put a link here in these comments, and it's a link to the recap that I wrote up for Forbes. If you take a look at this, open it up in another tab now. Don't close out this one. But if you take a look at this spin kick that Valentina Shevchenko lands on Caitlin Chukagian, it is one of the most disrespectful, crisp, nasty spin kicks you ever want to see. Chukagian had a glob of Vaseline over a cut that had been opened up from an elbow that Shevchenko had landed on her in top position, I think, at the end of the 1st or 2nd round. This kick comes through and slaps Chukagian in the face so hard, it sends this glob of Vaseline flying 3 to 4 feet away. It was Shevchenko is on another level right now. And I'm going to be honest with you. I actually think that I don't know that Amanda can. I don't know Amanda beats her again. Like, and I understand there's a weight difference, and I understand Amanda punches like a truck, but Shevchenko is at a place right now that is. I was literally in press row at UFC. I think it's 238 in Chicago when Shevchenko knocked out Jessica Eye. I have seen a lot of knockouts. I've seen quite a few knockouts in person. That was literally the scariest knockout I've ever seen in person. The sound of the kick and the sound of Jessica's Eye's body crumple against that canvas after that head kick. And it was literally like, I want to say 30 feet in front of me. It was insane. It was insane, you know. And Matt Martinez is saying she's too small for Amanda. I understand. I know that's how she lost. She lost twice to her, but these were very close decisions. Very close decisions. And I think that Shevchenko is a better fighter now than she was before. I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me if Amanda won again, but it certainly would not surprise me if they fought a 3rd time, if Shevchenko was able to pull it out. I am just super impressed with Valentina. And every time I see her fight, I get more impressed. But now let's move on to this main event. John Jones wins by unanimous decision, 49-48 on two cards, 49-46 on another. Joe Solis strikes again. That 49-46 card is of the devil. It is the most, it's ridiculous. And everybody knows. Everybody knows. If you know me, you know. If you've read my stuff, you know I have the utmost respect for John Jones. John is the greatest mixed martial artist that has ever lived. And I firmly believe that. But I don't think he won tonight. I don't. I think Dominic Reyes won rounds 1 through 3. I think you could make a case for John winning the second or third round, even though I think in the second round, I think he was outlanded by 11 significant strikes. But sometimes that can be a little bit deceiving. And also, a lot of people have to realize, some people don't know this, and it shocks me that they don't. The judges don't have access to the fight stats. So judges don't know significant strikes. Same thing in boxing. Judges don't know jabs, power shots. They don't know those. They don't have that count in front of them. They're not even actually allowed to have that. So that's just a guide more or less for fans, for the so to speak, and for people in the media like myself who go back and analyze something, and we basically can second guess a judge. But the judges don't have that. I love John. I think, like I said, John's the best fighter and the best fighter that has ever lived, but he did not win tonight. I don't think. I like I said, I scored it. Dominic Reyes won rounds 1 through 3. I thought John dominated 4 and 5, clearly dominated. I thought Reyes was gassed. I thought John took everything that he had to offer through the first 3 rounds, and I thought he pressed the issue in the fourth and the fifth. But I felt that he needed a stoppage. He he may have needed a stoppage. It was like I said, I scored the first 3 rounds for Reyes, and it was too close and too likely that Reyes had won the first 3 rounds for John not to really go hard after the stoppage. And I felt that he didn't necessarily go hard enough after it. And I think that if all things had been equal, and when I say all things had been equal, and we're not dealing with the mystique of John Jones and a longtime champion and all these different types of things, and just overall incompetent judging, Joe Solis scored this fight 49-46. Do you realize 49-46 means 4 rounds to 1 for John? I don't care how you look at it. There's no way in the world this is 49-46 for John Jones. There's no way. I could have understood 49-46 for Reyes before I could have understood it for John. And that's just me being 100% honest. Just 100% honest. I thought it was a horrible scorecard. Um, I don't think it's a robbery. And even Daniel Cormier said that. And obviously, Daniel Cormier saying that's pretty significant because we know he hates John. He said it wasn't a robbery. The fight was too close to call. And I'm going to read the tweet that he had, which I thought was pretty interesting. And we had a lot of people going in on Joe Solis, so that's just a thing. But Anthony Walker of Sherdog said he had it 48-47 for Reyes. Jason Floyd of Combat Press had it 48-47 for John, but he said he would have had no issue if it had gone for Reyes. Greg Rosenstein of ESPN had it 48-47 for Reyes. Shaheen Al-Shadi had it 48-47 for Reyes. He's from The Athletic. Adam Martin he says, I think John Jones is the best MMA fighter ever, but I also think he lost his last 2 fights now to Reyes and Thiago Santos. He lambasted the 49-46 card. Ariel Helwani of ESPN said that it really came down to the third in his opinion, but Reyes definitely won the first 2. That's kind of what I was saying. Daniel Cormier says it's not a robbery. Close fight, could have gone either way, 3-1 or 2-2 going into the fifth. I thought 3-2 Reyes, but the fight was so close it could have gone either way. Chris Weidman says that he had Reyes in the first 3 rounds. Credit to John Jones on coming on strong in the fourth and fifth, but he would have guessed that Reyes won that fight on the scorecards. It seemed to me, based off of the people that I read their account, that a lot of them had Dominic Reyes winning. It's tough. It's tough. And I don't have a problem with John winning. And this is regardless of my admiration for him as a fighter and all of that, right? Just overall. I appreciate you coming through, Psychic Bubblegum Man. I don't have a problem with John winning, but I do have a problem with 49-46. That's insane. That you either did not watch the fight or you don't know what you're watching. This was like a Stephen A. Smith scorecard or something. Like, what in the world is going on? And I don't mean to take a shot at my man, because obviously without people like him, there would be no me, in terms of, there's not a lot of African American sports writers out there. So I give him his respect, but he generally doesn't know what he's talking about when he's talking about mixed martial arts or combat sports, period. That was a horrible scorecard, man. I have no idea what he's looking at, what Joe Solis was looking at. So I do think that a rematch is in order. John did not seem to commit to that in the octagon when he was asked about what he wanted to do next. He said he'd have to see and and start talking with his team. I think that you could make a case that there should be a rematch. Now, I am actually very interested in seeing, like, what did Dana White say at the post-event press conference. One thing about Dana, he'll kind of tell it, how he feels. So, Dominic Reyes says he feels like he won. Now he's landed on real thick, saying he feels like he's the people's champion. Yeah, I don't know about all that, Dom. You might be, I understand, I get it, but you know, and as a matter of fact, Joe Solis actually looks like he took to somewhere to explain his scorecard. Um, he said via Twitter, let's see, let me explain my scoring of the main event to end the controversy. If you look at the stats, Reyes did not advance. Now, why is he talking about stats? I have no idea, because he's not even looking at that. But he says Reyes did not advance for one bit during the fight. That I agree with. Jones was clearly the most dominant fighter and won round 2, 3, 4, and 5. I have been working for the Texas Commission for years. I know my job. The Texas judge, let's see. Right. So this is what he said. All right. I believe and I understand you've been working your job for a while. I get it. And this show, to me, his answer reveals what the problem is. He's judging this fight, and Dominic Cruz was saying this and I don't agree with Dominic Cruz a lot, but he was saying this during the fight. He was like, these guys are boxing judges, and this is how they are looking at it. And that whole ring control and all of that, those are boxing judging criteria. And even that doesn't supersede someone landing more, even in boxing. If that was the case, Floyd Mayweather would hardly win no decisions, because he generally isn't coming forward. He's usually moving backwards, moving side to side, but he's outlanding his opponent, or he's landing at a higher clip. I just don't understand how you can say that. Yes, was Reyes moving a lot? He was, but he was also outlanding John. He was outlanding John through the first 3 rounds. I mean, do you realize, and obviously Joe Solis doesn't know this, or at least he shouldn't, but through the first 3 rounds, Dominic Reyes outlanded John Jones 82-58 in significant strikes. Now, as I mentioned, significant strikes don't tell the entire story. But when there is a gap that is that significant, and it's not solely based on one round, like maybe you just dominated one, that kind of tells you one guy seems to be more effective than the other. Granted, the second and third rounds were closer. So I don't think it's a horrible concept to say that John won one of those rounds. John definitely won the 4th and the 5th. But and so sign of the times, I appreciate you coming through. But you just said something. To beat the champion, you have to take the belt. I 100% disagree with that. There is no rule that says that in order to take a champion's belt, you have to beat him so overwhelmingly that warrants your title. No, you simply have to beat him within the confines of the rules. There is no separate rule book for beating somebody just because they're the champion. And I love John Jones. John Jones is the greatest mixed martial artist ever. But that you don't get a special rule set because you're a champion. If you fight a guy in the most boring fight ever, and this guy gets 7 takedowns and you get 6, guess what? The guy who got 7 takedowns and you got 6, and if your striking was equal, the guy that got the 7 takedowns deserves to get the round and or fight if that's the way it went. You don't get a special thing just because you are a champion. I mean, John won, like I said, John dominated the 4th and the 5th rounds. He dominated. I don't think anybody can make any question that he deserved those last 2 rounds. But to say he won 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is what Joe Solis is saying, that's just inaccurate. He did not win he did not win 4 rounds. He did not win 4 rounds. 3 at the most, but definitely not 4. So it was a very tough decision for Dominic Reyes to have to eat. Now, I don't agree with this little campaign he's going on now, and I can't say that I blame him, but I don't agree with this thing he's doing, saying he's the people's champion. No, bro, you're not. You're not. There's plenty of people throughout combat sports history who have had to deal with a tough loss, something that they didn't agree with. They're not the people's champion. I don't agree with that. You're not the champion. A draw, sign of the times, I would have totally G'd for that. If that's what it was, I would have said, okay, makes sense. But what's next though with John Jones? Like, what's next? Is it the winner of the Corey Anderson Jan Blachowicz fight? That would seem like it is, but I think a lot of people want to see him move up to heavyweight. He's talked about it. John against Stipe, John against Francis Ngannou is definitely interesting. I almost feel like he needs to reinvigorate himself, and not from a motivation standpoint, but from a standpoint of, like, I think you guys are saying this, that he looked a little old. I think Sign of the Times just said that he looked a little old tonight, right? And maybe looked a little older and slower against Santos as well. But if you look at his age, what is John, 32? He's still young for a heavyweight. He's still young for a heavyweight. John is 32, will be 33 in July. So I'm almost thinking that maybe if he moves up to heavyweight, perhaps he can be dominant again. But then again, here's the thing. What I'm noticing a lot is John's taking more shots now than he ever did. Now, perhaps that's because of the speed and the quickness of the light heavyweights, and perhaps he'll be able to slip and dodge those shots better at heavyweight, because generally the fighters who face are bigger, slower guys. But I don't know if he's able to eat and absorb those shots at heavyweight the way he ate and absorbed shots tonight against Reyes. He got hit flush multiple occasions tonight. A head kick he ate with seemingly no problem. Took an uppercut to the chin with seemingly no problem. He took a lot of straight left hands to the stomach with seemingly no problem. I mean, never flinched, And Simon Tyson, John has some mileage on him. He was a champion in his early 20s. Yes, he was. And also, you can't discount the effects that not living right and healthy, that puts mileage on you as well. You can be an old 32 because of your lifestyle, and that's real. So he's been in some tough fights, the Cormier fights, the Gustafsson fight, the Santos fight, now this fight. The Vitor Belfort fight was tough. Those are probably the only ones that have been tough for him. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think Corey Anderson or Jan Blachowicz has it to beat him. I think that both of those guys are a little too easy to hit. Blachowicz can crack, but he's a slower guy. And I don't, Reyes is an athlete, and you can see that today, right? Santos is an athlete, and you can see that today. Corey Anderson's a good athlete too, but I don't think he's quite as explosive. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting, man. I really do think whatever happens with John next is going to be really interesting. I know he had a plan that he wanted to fight at least 3 or 4 times this year. This was a tough fight. He's going to have to rest. We're on February 8th, February 9th. We're not going to see John Jones turn around talking about he's fighting in April or May. I think the earliest you see John is International Fight Week in July. Still gets an 8-week training camp that starts maybe in May, and he's ready to fight in July. So it's gonna be really interesting, though. And a better question is what's next for Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, if you just look at what is left in the UFC women's flyweight division, you almost think she has to take on some type of super fight type of thing with somebody like Amanda Nunes from another weight class, because I just don't know what else is there for her. Okay, she just beat Caitlin Chukagian. She just knocked out Jessica I before that. Do we really think that Joanne Calderwood, who is currently number 3, stands a better chance? Who thinks that? I mean, and JoJo is tough, right? She's a tough lady, and she's skilled, especially as a striker. She has good hands. She doesn't have huge power, but she's got good hands. She's coming off of a split decision victory herself over Andrea Lee, who has taken some tough losses. But she lost to Caitlin Chukagian back in June. What makes us think that she has an opportunity to do any better? But she seems like she's next up. Jennifer Maia, let me put this into perspective. Roxanne Modafferi is number 5. It ain't gonna work out. It's not gonna work out. It's just not going to work out. Now, the funny thing is Antonina Shevchenko is number 11. Now, obviously, she's not ready, even if it wasn't her sister that's the champion. But she's not ready. But that's gonna be, I know they won't fight each other, and I wouldn't want to see them fight each other. So somebody's gonna have to move up. Somebody's gonna have to move up, and I would think it's probably gonna be Shevchenko to challenge herself at women's bantamweight again, to fight and go and look for that fight with Amanda Nunes, a third fight, and to see if she's able to get something going. But Sign of the Time says he thinks that Stipe is a bad matchup for John. I don't think so. I really don't. Um, I don't think Stipe is a bad man. I think John beats Stipe. I think John beats Stipe relatively easily. Stipe doesn't have great strike defense. Stipe is also not a fantastic athlete from an explosiveness standpoint. I think Stipe beat Daniel Cormier because Daniel Cormier had something going on with him mentally. He refused to take the advice from his corner. He just fought. I've never seen Daniel Cormier fight a dumb fight ever, except for that fight. He never went for a takedown. He was almost like he was hell bent on fighting or beating Stipe in a certain type of way, and it didn't work out. Bigger, stronger man, and Daniel just fought. I think fought a bad fight. I mean, I think Stipe does have better hands than John, but it's not. That's just one aspect of it. You know, um, I don't think that Stipe will have the cardio that John will have. John is definitely better with his feet, his knees, his elbows. I think John's probably a better wrestler. I think John's definitely a better submission guy. I just don't see. Appreciate that, Nez Mendoza. Yes, you guys, please smash that like button for me, so that we want to keep this going, man. I want to keep this going pretty much every weekend if we can after the fights. I kind of had to make a choice between this one and the Gary Russell Jr. fight, which I had on a second monitor for Fighting King Tug. It was a competitive fight though. During the Gary Russell fight, I kind of turned UFC's volume down. We were looking back and forth. I was really, I thought, a competitive fight with King Tug and Gary Russell. Russell definitely clearly won the fight, but yeah. Sana Time says, what weight would John Jones come in at? I think 235, between 235, 239 would be really good for John. Um, I think definitely at heavyweight, but I think 239, 235, somewhere in there is good for him. He doesn't want to get too bulky where he loses a quickness edge that he would have over most heavyweights. And I think if he starts to try to carry too much weight, he could be in risk of doing that. But at 235, in between there, 235, 240, I think that's a good look for him. 240 might be a little bit too heavy. I think that's the magic weight for him at heavyweight. We will see. I think it's inevitable. It's going to happen. He's going to compete at heavyweight at some point. Um, I think it's actually better for his career if he competes at heavyweight. One, he gets an opportunity to become another a second division champion, which is, the list is getting a little bit longer now of the guys who and girls who have done it, but it still would be something I think that's good for his overall legacy and only further validates his case as being the GOAT. Secondly, like I said, I think that these light heavyweights as athletes are starting to catch up, and their explosiveness is beginning to be a really huge challenge for John. John is like John's everybody's Super Bowl. You know, he's been defeating legends and all these guys his whole career, but all of these guys are coming up behind him, and they're like, "This is the dude I've been aiming at for the past 7, 8 years." And for John, it's just another guy. So he's getting up for these guys as best as he can, but these guys are coming with millions and millions of minutes of watching footage and trying to prepare for him. So he's at a little bit of a disadvantage, you know what I'm saying? Because he's not quite as prepared. So we'll see. We'll see. But I do think speed is one of the biggest things that we're seeing. Santos and Reyes are both fast, athletic guys, and those guys seem to have given John the most problems. That's why I don't think that Blockowitz or Corey Anderson will pose as much of a threat. John probably knows that as well. And that's why those fights might be his last at light heavyweight, because he will have again have cleaned out the division, and it will probably be more like safe for him to go ahead and move up to heavyweight because there won't be any more legitimate contenders at that point, unless of course he would then have a rematch with Dominic Reyes. But I think he's just as soon leave that division for Dominic Reyes and say, "Hey man, if you're the best, go ahead and now it's your reign." So um that's all I got for you guys today. What are you saying? Let's see. Nesmado said, "Oh yes, yes, Sir Peter is your Facebook friend as well. I know he is." We'll see. We'll probably get Sir Peter back on here at some point. But I'm gonna bounce out. I still got a couple other things I still need to cover for the night. We got some secondary stories. I'm gonna talk about that. What's next for Valentina Shevchenko? So if you don't follow me yet, or if you don't read my writings on Forbes, make sure you take a look at that link. I'm gonna put the link back in in the chat again. This is just for one particular story, but you can also click on my name, and you can go and look at pretty much everything I write: combat sports, sports video games for Forbes. But I'm gonna write about what's next for Valentina Shevchenko. We're gonna talk about the judges themselves, how that seemingly wrecked what we looked at tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about Gary Russell. And I don't know, has John Jones lost his invincibility? So we'll see. But I appreciate everybody coming through. Ness Mendoza, Sign of the Times, everybody who was here. God bless and peace.